it's an exciting time to be sure. Dana White's the greatest promoter in combat sports history. I don't think there's a close second. And we'll see what he can do with boxing, because I've always said when the sweet science, the sport of boxing, is at its best, I don't think anything touches it. The problem is, more often than not, over the last 15 years, it really hasn't been at its best.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in 2025, I am honored and privileged to be in the digital presence of the great Jon Anik, my fellow New Englander, fellow proud member of the Shave the Head Mafia, who will call the action this Saturday, Red Sox shirt and all, T-Mobile Arena, UFC 313 in Las Vegas. Very busy guy, and I appreciate him returning to chat some fist fighting and more just days before this big card. Jon, how are you, buddy?
My man, it's good to see you. It looks like you are in a new space since we last spoke. And what a crazy juxtaposition for me, going from the UFC Apex, where I called fights for the first time in a year, to T-Mobile Arena. So I think for the fighters, for the athletes, for the staff, as much as we respect and love that little UFC Apex and all of its benefits, I can't wait to get back into the big arena, because this is what the fighters deserve. And this is why they wanted to compete in the UFC, largely to feel that adoration, the adulation, and the love from the crowd. So yes, I'm excited to have 22,000 people instead of 200.
Yes, love to hear that. I don't think you're alone in that sentiment, but it is great to talk to you. Before we get into the fights, there's been some breaking news as of late, and no, I'm not talking about TKO Boxing, although we'll probably touch on that later. You have your own application, Jon. You have your own app. How about that? The Jon Anik app? How did this all happen? And for those who want to download this app, what can they expect with it and with you on the app?
Well, thank you, buddy. It's about 8 a.m. Pacific right now. So I actually thought you were about to drop some major breaking news on me that I was not aware of. So thank you for the plug. Great team at Hangar 3 developed this Jon Anik application, and there was so much work that went into it. Honestly, I felt like when presented, I couldn't say no, but it's free to download. Most of the content there is going to be stuff that maybe you've seen over the years on my Instagram page, but now it's going to be matriculating over there. So when I share my pay-per-view open before an event, which I will do this weekend, that'll be on the Jon Anik app. And part of the reason for doing this was just to create a community, to have an easier way to connect with fans. When I go on Instagram, there's just too much noise. So I can't connect with the people that really have been my day one supporters. So that was the impetus for it. All of my fighter cards, that I have showed you over the years, these will be available both for purchase and via auction on the app. And the big plan, if you really want to know, we're developing a curriculum for the Jon Anik Broadcasting School, and it's a hugely ambitious thing. I don't even know if I can fucking pull it off, but that is a big impetus for the application as well, that if we could develop a curriculum, teach the classes, all of that would live on the Jon Anik app as well.
That is very cool. So make sure you download the app and get yourself ready for UFC 313, because Alex Pereira is back again, Jon Anik, fourth title defense in 11 months. This time, he is fighting Magomed Ankalaev, a guy who has been saying, and many have agreed, that he should have gotten the shot a long ass time ago. What a super interesting matchup this is, Jon, because it's one of those fights where I just have a hard time figuring out what is going to happen out there in that octagon.
Well, I think the good news is that your boss is not holding your hands to the fire, requiring you to make a pick. I could be wrong on that, right? But when the betting odds makers set a line, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but they're trying to command two-way action, right? So Alex Pereira has not been a big betting favorite against Yuri Prochazka, against Jamal Hill, and he's a very slight favorite this weekend against Magomed Ankalaev. Now, you and I and others probably are aligned in thinking that maybe Magomed Ankalaev has a better chance to beat Pereira than maybe we thought Prochazka or Hill had going into that fight. But it's all but one lens through which to look at the fight. To me, it's very telling that Magomed Ankalaev is getting action at -102. I think there's value with Alex Pereira. I think the championship experience at some point should count for something. We sat down with Magomed Ankalaev yesterday. Certainly the media grind, I think, is taking its toll a little bit. He hasn't necessarily experienced this before. Yes, he fought Jan Blachowicz for the title, but he wasn't fighting the biggest superstar in mixed martial arts at present. So I think that's an angle. Certainly the Ramadan thing is an angle. He was completely parched in our fighter meeting, even though I know he is going to make some concessions to try to make it all work. Fascinating matchup. I think Ankalaev's probably going to wrestle a little bit, but, this is as anticipated a light heavyweight championship fight, I think, as we've had in probably 18 months or so. And it just had to happen. For Poaton's legacy, for Ankalaev, it had to happen, and we're 2 days away.
Yeah, this legacy, this journey of Alex Pereira just continues to build, and he's just been so good in there. And even when he doesn't have his fastball, like he did in the Khalil Roundtree fight, with everything he revealed after that fight, he still finds ways to go out there and win and knock people out. But John, this guy's fought a lot, and he's been through a lot over the past year. Plus, there are a lot of people that we respect in this business who say, maybe he's a little distracted. Maybe he's not focused on this fight enough. Do you feel like he may be as vulnerable, I guess, as he's been heading into one of these title defenses? Or is this just another thing that comes up with a guy that's as active as Pereira is?
Yeah, it's a great question, but I just don't see that vulnerability. I really think it's much ado about nothing. This is one of the hardest workers in the game. And anyone who watched Embedded or the UFC Countdown show, you see the true connective tissue he has with all of these men in the great state of Connecticut, right? There is an undeniable bond between these individuals. And whether he's in Sydney, Australia, making $1 million doing appearances 3 weeks before the fight, or training in the snow in Danbury, Connecticut, this man is putting in the work. I think the bigger issue, Michael, might just be the opponent, that he's just fighting a guy that has the skills to extend him and potentially beat him. But I don't worry about Plinio Cruz and Glover Teixeira and that team getting him ready. I think the only window of vulnerability, for lack of a better way to put it, is just that he might be fighting the best guy he's fought in this light heavyweight division.
Ankalaev has been saying, I'll strike with you. I won't shoot for takedowns. And you mentioned you think he probably will shoot for takedowns. I spoke with him last night. You talk about the media grind. Seems like he's kind of over all this at this point, but he's like, you know what? I'm just going to win. If I have to take him down, I'll take him down. So he's kind of just like whatever with that whole promise. But I think people forget that Magomed Ankalaev has some of the nastiest knockouts in the UFC's light heavyweight division. I just don't know if this is actually a striker versus grappler classic matchup. You know what I mean? Like Magomed has those in his back pocket, but he's primarily a striker, is he not?
Yeah, Magomed Ankalaev's a striker. He's a knockout artist. He certainly can grapple. He can wrestle. He's position over submission. But what he really is, and again, this is more for your audience than you, he's a mixed martial arts lifer. Wealth of amateur experience, just so much combat sports experience even before he got to his 20th birthday. And I do think eventually, even if he doesn't have the championship experience of Poatan, that stuff could rear its head in fight. He just has so many repetitions. He's a very instinctual fighter, tremendous fight IQ, his ability to adjust in fight. When he fought Jan Blachowicz, he lost the first 3 rounds on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards and was able to adjust and dig deep and exude heart and salvage a split draw. So I believe in Magomed Ankalaev. I just would agree with you. I don't think he's going to be chain wrestling and shooting takedowns. I think instinctually late in the fight, potentially he'll go to that. But Poatan's takedown defense is good, and there's energy expenditure for the offensive wrestler too. So I think he's going to mix it up. I just think he's got to be mindful of those calf kicks early and make sure that he avoids that Blachowicz fate at all costs.
Yeah, that's the biggest question for me is, has he learned how to defend calf kicks? Because certainly didn't really do it against Alexander Rakic. He just walks right through all those. The Jan Blachowicz fight was one that a lot of people, and I think, I don't know if this is because of how Dana White reacted to it at the press conference. I don't feel that fight gets the respect it deserves. I think it's a way more interesting fight than maybe the casual audience will lead you to believe. And it's been such a long road back for Ankalaev. He's watching Alex Pereira just fight all these guys, and he's like, all right, what do I have to do to get back in there? And I asked Magomed this last night when I talked to him, do you think you're going to have to beat him twice? And at that point, he's just like, I'm not even thinking about that. Like, just get me in there and fight him now. But if he wins, do you think they run this right back, John? Does he have to beat him twice in order to move on from Alex Pereira? Or do we do what happened the last time Alex Pereira lost the belt? Thanks for the cheese division. I'm moving up. In other words, do you think this is Pereira's last fight at 205?
I think it depends upon how the fight goes, right? If Magomed Ankalaev beats Alex Pereira 50-45 and dominates him over 25 minutes, that wouldn't lay the foundation for a rematch as much as, say, a quick Ankalaev knockout, because Poatan has established so much goodwill with the fan base, with the promotion, and you parlay that with the fact that there aren't a lot of obvious light heavyweight contenders right now. You got Jamal Hill fighting Khalil Roundtree Jr., right? But are you going to do Ankalaev versus Bogdan Guskov right now? I'm not sure you're going to do that. The one thing that I will say, Alex Pereira can still make middleweight. and he wants to fight Dricus du Plessis. He did not defend the UFC middleweight championship of all the accolades for the future UFC Hall of Famer, Alex Poatan Pereira. He never defended the middleweight championship. And if you think for a second that he doesn't have an appetite, no pun intended, to go back down to 185, you're absolutely crazy. And if the calendar doesn't align for him to challenge Jon Jones or Tom Aspinall in the heavyweight division, I don't think he's going to stick around at 205 to fight Bogdan Guskov, even though you and I fucking love the guy. He's probably going to try to go down to 85 and fight Dricus du Plessis. Now, Chimaev is going to have a say in all of that, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that it's middleweight, right? Because he is that disciplined. And even this week, Michael, when he was asked about it, the first name on the tip of his tongue is not Jon Jones, it's Dricus du Plessis.
Man, that is just such a wild fight. Carlos Ulberg is probably thinking to himself, like, what do he has to dust up.
That's a great point. No, yeah. And if Carlos Ulberg beats Jan Blachowicz, even if some might suggest that's a little bit of a fast track, I think that would make a lot of sense. We just have to see what happens this weekend. And I do agree with a big chunk of the fan base that is not expecting a quick fight, that expects that this fight is really going to, bring out the best in both guys, but it could be a 25-minute classic.
Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev 2 is the new co-main event, and people were very excited about the Dan Hooker fight. I was excited. I'm sure you were excited. And obviously, Gaethje is Gaethje, the people's champ. Everyone is pumped to see this guy fight. But I don't know, John. The Gaethje and Fiziev 1 was awesome. It was one of the 5 best fights on our website of 2023. Yeah. And in my opinion, like it is great to see Rafael Fiziev finally back in there. The consensus reaction to this, at least what I saw, was kind of like, okay, sure, more than a hell yeah. Did you notice that as well?
Yeah, well, I think Justin wanted to fight Charles Oliveira or Arman Tsarukyan. And what I intimated with Justin in our fighter meeting yesterday, you just need a green stripe on your Wikipedia page. It doesn't matter if it's Rafael Fiziev or Arman Tsarukyan or Charles Oliveira. You beat anyone who steps in here, you can lay claim to a title fight against Islam Makhachev. Now, I don't know what they're going to do with Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria, but I do know that Justin Gaethje versus Islam Makhachev is a fresh matchup and one that fans would have a healthy appetite for, especially if Gaethje goes out and beats Rafael Fiziev as an underdog this weekend. What's crazy about Fiziev, 11 guys turned him down when he fought Bobby Green. He's been idling since last September looking for a fight. And I don't blame a lot of these lightweights that don't want to deal with that combination of speed and power. Gaethje, I think, didn't have reservations, but he knew how stiff a challenge that was when those guys fought in 2023. And you saw how closely contested those rounds were. But I think for Justin, not wanting to lose this training camp, whether Fiziev's number 11 guy in the world or the number 6 guy in the world, you get a win with any sort of style points. Islam Makhachev very well could be next for you. I can understand why fans would have wanted Arman Tsarukyan to step in here. And I guess I was a little bit disappointed, right? If Tsarukyan, after what happened with Islam Makhachev, just needs a couple of weeks, if you are that guy, if you are about this life, I feel like you need to be ready when 2 of the best lightweights in the world are about to engage. And unfortunately, Tsarukyan was not available, and they pivoted it to Fiziev. And one thing I just want to share with you real quick, Fiziev, bro, in our fighter meeting, he was like, dude, this is a miracle. Like, it was a dream to get this fight once, but to get it twice is an absolute miracle, because he's sitting around thinking, Gaethje beat him. I'm not even in the top 10. Justin's not going to take this fight. So credit to both parties. Fiziev was training, maybe not in a championship level training camp like Gaethje was, but I can't wait to see it, even if maybe fan enthusiasm was a little bit tempered when it was first announced.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a banger. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be super fun to watch. And I think people are just trying to figure out the stakes. And I know you mentioned that, Gaethje gets a win, as we've talked about many times over the last year plus. Availability is your best friend right now, especially at 155. Ask Kanata Moicano. If you're available and you're ready to go and you say yes, you're getting the title fight. Do you feel like the stakes are the same for Rafael Fiziev despite the layoff? And he hasn't had a win in a hot minute, but he's been in some crazy fights. He had the bad loss to Mateusz Gamrot as an injury, super close fight with Gaethje that a lot of people thought he won. Do you feel like the stakes are the same for him as they are for Justin?
I had this very thought process internally as we were in our fighter meeting with Rafael Fiziev, and it seems as though maybe putting him, if he wins, in an eliminator, against someone like Arman Tsarukyan would probably be the promotional direction that they would go. Now, certainly if Rafael Fiziev goes out and knocks out Justin Gaethje and gets Islam Makhachev's attention, and internally, they aren't of a healthy appetite to make the Topuria fight right now. Certainly Fiziev could move up without an obvious number one contender. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't see really how Fiziev would pass Charles Oliveira, even though Charles lost to Arman Tsarukyan. It was so competitive at UFC 300. Charles has done so much. We've seen plenty of fighters, Israel Adesanya and others, Hall of Fame type athletes, get a championship opportunity off a loss. So, and Charles did come back and beat Michael Chandler anyway. But I'm just saying, like, if you were to have Charles fight for the title before Arman, I can make a case for it.
Yeah. And I don't know how many number one contender fights Charles Oliveira has to win in order to actually make this title shot. So we'll see what happens. A lot of lightweight fights on this main card. We got King Green versus Mauricio Huffy, who's on his way up. We got some just fun ass fights on this card. We got Ignacio Bahamondes versus Jalen Turner, two guys who look like middleweights fighting at 155.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting matchups on this card, a lot of up and comers that people have their eye on. What's the low key banger for Jon Anik heading into UFC 313?
So I got to talk about Ignacio Bahamondes, and we have documented his story, right? National Chilean kickboxing champion when he was 14 years of age, moves to the US at 16, crying himself to sleep every night, but he knew that this is what he had to do. He aligned with Mike Valley in Chicago when he was 17. And now look at him at 27 years old. He's favored to beat Jalen Turner. It's absolutely incredible. He's a young father, which I think has forged him as well. When Bilal Muhammad suggests that Nacho is the best striker in the UFC, I promise you it's not hyperbolic. It's not because he's his teammate, right? If you were to put up a list of the top 15 strikers in all divisions and not put Ignacio Bahamondes on that list, then you're not doing your fucking homework, So he's one of the best strikers in the UFC, maybe the best striker in the lightweight division. Great opportunity to prove it. And I think Jalen Turner, he's leaned into his faith spiritually. I think he's in a really good place. But, bro, he was in the doldrums after that Renato Moicano fight. I think he really questioned whether or not he wanted to do this anymore because he's such an affable, nice guy that, causing potentially life altering damage at the end of a fight like that is not necessarily something that he's cut out to do. So yeah, I know it's kind of a cop-out as the feature bout on pay-per-view, but that's the one that jumps off the card for me because if Nacho can win it, the world's his oyster.
Yeah, it's such a good fight. I was so impressed by the Torres knockout, just super impressive. Not a lot of people were giving him a really great chance to win that fight, and then he just kind of silenced all the doubters. It's going to be a fun card to watch. Last thing before we let you go, I know you're a very busy man. Let's talk about what I sort of teased at the beginning. UFC getting into boxing. TKO Boxing, big announcement from Dana White, Turki Al-Sheikh yesterday. What was your reaction to that? Because I feel like the boxing world is about to get flipped completely upside down after this.
Well, Major League Baseball has gone to great lengths over the last couple of years to make the game more appealing, right? Whether it's making the bases bigger or instituting a pitch count. And one thing that I don't think we do enough of in mixed martial arts is doing things to make the sport better, really affecting change, whether we go to a 10-minute round one or give the judges half points or give the referees more resources. One thing that we don't do particularly well is advancing our sport. But the reason I always refer to the UFC as the combat sports leader on broadcast is because in totality, in terms of a live event production and how to put on a combat sports broadcast, I don't believe anybody does it better. It's not because I work for the company, right? So to think about that production team getting behind boxing and really doing it right, getting out some of the murkiness. We don't have a true meritocracy in the UFC, but it's pretty damn close. Trying to get some sort of meritocracy in boxing is absolutely great. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't put my name into the hat to maybe try to get a rep or two. It's an exciting time to be sure. Dana White's the greatest promoter in combat sports history. I don't think there's a close second. And we'll see what he can do with boxing because I've always said when the sweet science, the sport of boxing is at its best, I don't think anything touches it. The problem is, more often than not, over the last 15 years, it really hasn't been at its best.
Well, we know you're going to be at your best on Saturday alongside the great Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan, UFC 313. Jon, appreciate you so much, my man. Enjoy the rest of your time in Vegas. Can't wait to hear your voice surrounded by 22,000 plus inside T-Mobile Arena, watching Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev do the damn thing for the light heavyweight title. Appreciate it, my man. Have a good one.
Always a pleasure, my man. Go Sox.